So the Financial Intelligence Center has issued a new directive mandating crypto asset service providers in South Africa to track and verify crypto transactions effective April 30, 2025. This aligns with the Financial Action Task Force recommendations addressing South Africa's grey-listed status. Now, the directive enforces the travel rule requiring CASPs to transmit detailed originator and beneficiary information for traders with expectations for transactions under 5,000 Rand unless suspicious activity is detected. Now, CASPs must also establish policies for high-risk unhosted wallets. Non-compliance will result in sanctions, marking a significant shift in crypto regulation and financial transparency in the Southern African nation. This morning, Clive Ramatibela-Smith, Senior Executive Partner, Deter Capital and Partners, joins me to talk about this. Thank you so much, Clive, for joining us on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's have an understanding of what these regulations are as regards cryptocurrency. First, what is the significance of this new crypto directive, and how does it align with the FATF's travel rule?
Well, it is in line with what has been required in terms of what the grey listing points system was supposed to have ticked. So you'd remember following that listing last year, what the financial or the National Treasury has been trying to do is to align things to meet with the Financial Task Force's requirements and regulations. So crypto is a very complex structure of finance. And unfortunately, once again, you can see how easily the government and the regulators have fallen behind. And now they're trying to play catch up following, obviously, the grey listing. There's been a lot of activity in that space in South Africa. A lot of people have been duped and scammed, unfortunately, through similar structures within the South African space. And it's simply because it hadn't been actually regulated. And even as I'm speaking to you now, as you rightfully mentioned, it will only start in April of 2025. So what is the purpose of that? What is it that is behind it? I'll just go through the basic 5 things that are a requirement, including the fact that now companies will be expected to meet with the Financial Intermediary and Advisory Services Act, which is falling under what's called the FICA, which is the Financial Intelligence Center Act, which was endorsed in South Africa in 2008, 2009. The exchanging of a crypto asset for a fiat currency or vice versa will be required to be registered. We'll need also to have the exchanging one from one crypto asset for another. That will also be regulated. You'll have to be making sure that when conducting a transaction that transfers a crypto asset to one crypto asset, it addresses the FICA requirements, which include the personal details of the person or company that is being traded, and also provide the proof of banking and proof of residency if it's an individual or a business, for them to be
Clive,
able to do that.
Clive, that's actually where the problem is when we talk about confidentiality, having to share information or details of both the originator and the beneficiary. Now, don't you think there's a need for us to strike a balance, because we're looking at a cryptocurrency that has been bugged over time with so many issues, so to speak. I don't want to call them regulations as regards how the operations should go. But then when we begin to share such information, don't you think we're compromising the details of those who actually use the platform?
Well, my friend, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, this is the exact opposite reason why crypto was created, why we have technology like blockchain, so that people do not be able to trace back some of the assets that move around. But when you find yourself in the pit hole of a grey listing, you have to bring up some form of regulation to try and control that. And I doubt that it will have the kind of effect that the government and regulators are expecting it to have, because people people are already utilizing these platforms and move assets even on a global market without being traced. The question is, will this be enough? Will people actually register? And the answer to that question is, we currently only have 20 companies that are participating in getting licensing just to trade on crypto. What does that mean? That means that the interest is for a few companies to do so, and there'll be very much limited opportunity for others to participate, because the reason why blockchain exists is so that you don't have these kind of disclosures like you've just mentioned now.
So invariably, if we have this kind of situation, there's a possibility that there could be layoffs, or maybe there will be some crypto platforms that might be closing shop if they're not able to meet up with this regulation. But Clive, I'd like you to just, we'll look into that. I'd like you to just hold on to that when we, of course, have to go on a break right now. So when we return, we'll look at what implication it will have on the crypto platforms that already exist in the country. We'll go on a short break. We'll be back in a bit. We've been talking about the new crypto regulation by the Financial Intelligence Center in South Africa to curb terrorism and money laundering. And we're looking at what implication that will have for the crypto space in the country. I've been talking to Clive Matibele-Smith, who is the Senior Executive Partner, Hecare Capital and Partners. So he's been helping us understand it. So Clive, let me come back to you at this point. Earlier on, you said that there are just about 20 crypto platforms are operating in South Africa. And we're looking at the implication of these new rules for those who might not be able to meet up with the regulations, how it will affect the operations. And there's the fear, so to speak, or skepticism, not skepticism, fear, that, it might lead to some of these platforms closing shop. And it might also undermine the innovation that this crypto platform or verse is meant to drive in the country. Are you also experiencing or going to express such fear if we continue to have these kind of rules? Because we don't even know how stringent they are and if these crypto platforms will be able to measure up.
So let's start with the first part of your question. The already existing and operational companies that are already trading on crypto in the country. The biggest one being Luno has been around for a while now, and they've been working with international standards, and they've actually done very, very well. The others are very scarce, and many of them are actually linked to the banking sector, because that's how private sector thinks. When they realize that there's a platform being introduced that will require some monitoring, they utilize the existing regulatory framework to enter into that space so that they can have better control of how policy will be directed in the future, which is very, very smart, by the way. But the problem is, why do people use crypto? Why do people want blockchain? Why do people buy Bitcoins? It's because of what is the traditional reason for trade, is to get value for things that you would not necessarily get at an open market. So it is actually a facade to try and regulate a structure like that does not want to be associated with a regulatory framework, nor does it want to be framed as cash or fiat money, so that you will not be able to trace it. That is the basis. That is the backbone of why we have crypto. So to try and regulate it and formalize it, yes, it's a good thing. Yet at the same time, it's not going to stop these other companies, legit or illegit, to continue to be able to trade.
It's quite interesting, Clive, that it seems that you're saying that the main reason, or the ulterior motive, so to speak, for those who would use the crypto platform to trade is because they want to do those kind of transactions without being traced. Of course, we know some companies who actually use these crypto platforms and the exchange to do legitimate businesses. So if we are going to deal with the issues around legitimacy or illegitimacy on the part of the handlers or the users of these platforms, is it only about regulation, or do we need to probably scale up, areas around proper monitoring and seeing how we can actually pinpoint those who are using it for illicit trade and apprehending them? Because at times we can talk about regulation, then we can also talk about the implementation of these regulations when we know that even the handlers can circumvent the process.
Let me give you an example. In this country currently, we have a serious problem with illegal mining. And why is it that we have problems with illegal mining? It's because a lot of the mines, the mining companies, when they leave the shafts, when they leave the site where they've been mining for many years, they don't do what is regulatory required of them to be able to rehabilitate those mines, make sure that the shafts are shut down so that you can protect the land, the environment, but also make sure that people don't have access to it because there's a health and safety regulatory framework for that. However, the mines currently, as we speak, the minister mentioned that there's 1,710 open shaft mines that were left derelict that have not been utilized. Why is it that mining companies leave these mines open? Because it costs money and it cuts down on their profit margins. Similarly, crypto is what it is because of the value it provides to its users so that they can be able to have access to cryptocurrency, to coins, and to access to money flows without necessarily being judged or even being charged levies and tariffs that go with using traditional ways of trading. So therefore, why would you want to regulate that further and make it look like you're still dealing with fiat cash? Because that's the very reason why they created crypto, so that they avoid those type of things. That's why people buy crypto. That's why people buy value in crypto, because it's created its own value without necessarily going through the traditional monetary system that is existing in the world. So my answer to you is yes, you can try and regulate it. You can try and formalize it. However, the very existence of it being there is so that people escape the regulatory framework that is addressed or that is linked with monetary policy and functioning. So it's a really tough fight. It's an uphill battle, and I don't think that even South Africa itself, where we've seen even in the US, companies have gotten away. People have lost billions because people want to try crypto without the regulatory framework.
I understand that. So for now, what are the implications of this directive? Do you think, what implications do you think it will have for foreign investment in South Africa's digital asset market, especially, given the criticisms that government policies are overly restrictive and the fact that we're seeing globally that crypto asset value is on the rise. We're looking at over $100,000, so to speak, and the fact that South Africa might be missing out from that gig.
I'm looking at you. You look like you're somebody that owns some Bitcoin. Am I right?
Not really.
So this is not us promoting them indirectly, but nonetheless, I mean, it is shocking the surge that we've seen in crypto coins, the likes of Bitcoin and others as well that are available, and the technology is being advanced and it's being more and more complicated. The implications for those who are in the South African market that want to penetrate and look at also opportunities for foreign investment or foreign opportunities for people to trade. I think you'll have those top 20 ones being very, very careful how they follow legitimacy and make sure that regulatory frameworks are met and their compliance is tight enough so that they can be able to trade. But the rest who do not wish or do not even feel like they should register because there's a cost that comes with it and the client base that they're dealing with. And the question is, will that be able to expose some of the clients that they have and the kind of money that they want to have? Remember, if they do register, if you have your FICA, if you have your phase regulatory framework, even SARS, the South African Revenue Services, will be able to see how much you're earning and be able to deduct what is owed to them. So regulations are very nice, but they make it very difficult for people to trade. And I think the traditional South African crypto masters will find a way to exchange these currencies without necessarily being picked up by the regulator nor by the South African Reserve Bank.
We understand that South Africa is actually racing against time to get off the FATF's grey list as regards, the accusations of money laundering activities and terrorism financing that we've seen in the country.
I've got good news for you. In the budget speech, the Minister of Finance said that out of the 24 points that South Africa was set by the Technical Financial Team Task Force, they have already done 18 away with them. And so by the time the review comes next year, February, they're hoping that the 6 that's left will also be covered. So let's see what the results will be in February.
So invariably, you are saying that by February, or looking at the deadline, that is April, of course, for next year. Are you saying that there are no complexities involved now with implementing these regulations or carrying out these regulations, considering the timeline now and the challenges that we've seen go on in terms of monitoring and regulating the crypto space in the country?
I believe that the principles of regulatory framework that have been put up front as the requirements to meet will be met. Definitely, the South African government and the National Treasury will make sure of that, together with the sub. They'll make sure that the financial services sector is really tight knit and it will be regulated. However, what I'm saying is, in as much as we can tick all the boxes and get to all 24, the decision will still be with the financial task force to decide whether South Africa has met them. And the question, my question would be, the regulatory framework, is it enough to stop illicit financial movements and transfers? And my answer to that is, you can do all the regulations and you'll still find some loopholes. And I'm asking myself, is it enough just to do those regulations? And I'm saying, no, it's not enough, but it is a stride in the right direction. And I'm hoping that, it will be satisfying to the world. By the way, the financial sector in South Africa is rated amongst top 10 of the best in the world, only up until we had state capture, which unfortunately saw about $11 billion worth of leave South Africa.
I was going to give South Africa a round of applause until you mentioned the state capture, so I'll just hold it for now. So while you were talking about if the new regulations are enough, and if there's a possibility of loopholes in these new regulations, there have been talks around the 5,000 Rand threshold for transaction verification, if that would be sufficient to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing. For instance, for someone who is engaged in such activity, can decide to send 5,000 Rand in different tranches. That is a loophole. So if we are going to optimize this regulation, how would you advise them to go about it?
First and foremost, it's a digital currency, meaning that there's digitalization that needs to be done, and you'll have to still structure things that you are going to be working as a bank, because then you can red flag these transactions that go over 5,000. And by the way, that's on an individual basis. So when it's a company and it's a grouping and you don't know who the underlying assets belong to, then that becomes a challenge as well. So the question is, will they be able to meet that standard? And it's going to be very chalk and cheese. We're going to have to really work through the different regulatory frameworks to make sure that every company meets those regulations. But secondly, what's very, very important, what's critical is we have ways in which you can track, trace transactional capacity and capability in this country. We have some of the best investigative structures that work with the banks, the best IT personnel, the best IT engineers, and also I think they'll have to consider utilizing things like AI, for example, to be able to regulate firmly. And that's also a very costly exercise. But if you are serious about regulation, the cost of it and making sure it's done correctly is irrelevant when it's going to protect you and the clients and the consumer, to make sure that they are trading fairly. So yes, it's a hefty task, but however, I believe that they're serious about getting to the bottom of it and making sure that people are regulated and companies also pay their equal share in the trademarks that they will be utilizing to get those markets. So it's a good thing, but at the same time, it is very, very hard to combat the loopholes that are within the system.
Okay, and I hope that, even with the customers, they would be able to feel safe with their crypto investments, while also have their details or their data being protected. Of course, if it gets into the wrong hands, we'll be having another conversation on this.
I have a question. Lenka, I have a question.
What's the question?
How do you trade crypto if you are risk adverse? There's no way somebody gets involved in crypto and feel that they're safe. So
I totally understand. I understand. It's just a bit of balance on both sides anyway. Clive Matibele Smith, Senior Executive Partner here at Capital and Partners. It was nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, brother.
All right.